This is the horror of modern man. Because he ends in nothing, he ultimately is nothing.
William Lane Craig is a name familiar to anyone with even a passing interest in philosophy of religion. As you probably know, Craig is research professor of philosophy at Talbot School of Theology in La Mirada, California, and he's authored over 30 books. But he's probably best known for his sparring with atheists in his many public debates. Now, in his writings, Craig is fond of claiming that without the existence of God and immortality, life is ultimately meaningless. See, Craig reasons that if our lives end at our physical death, or are of only of a finite duration, then our actions become inconsequential or causally irrelevant, in the sense of not making a difference in the grand scheme of things, and therefore ultimately futile or meaningless.
If each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, then what ultimate meaning can be given to his life? Does it really matter whether he ever existed or not? Now, it might be said that his life was important because it influenced others or affected the course of history. But that shows only a relative significance to his life, not an ultimate significance.
Now, Craig also argues that if God does not exist, there simply are no ultimately significant events. All events are ultimately meaningless. And this is because, on Craig's view, there can be no objective values at all if God does not exist.
If all of the events are ultimately meaningless, then what significance is there in influencing any of them? Mankind is destined only to perish in the eventual heat death of the universe. And thus the contributions of the scientist to the advance of human knowledge, the efforts of the doctor to alleviate pain and suffering, the efforts of the diplomat to secure peace in the world, the sacrifices of good people everywhere to better the lot of the human race. In the end, all of these come to nothing. They don't make one bit of difference, not one bit.
So again, the claim is that the existence of God and immortality are required for life to be ultimately meaningful, because only if both conditions are met are our actions even capable of being causally relevant to genuinely significant events. In a recent paper entitled Fairness and Futility, published in the International Journal for Philosophy of Religion, the link you can find below, philosopher Toby Betenson points out, though, that on Craig's view, there exist at least two ways in which a life could count as futile or ultimately meaningless. The first way is that life is futile if our actions are causally relevant, but only causally relevant to events which are ultimately insignificant. The second way is that life is futile if our actions are causally irrelevant to events which are ultimately significant. Craig seems to focus almost entirely on the first sense in which a life would count as ultimately futile, but interestingly, Betenson wants to argue that it is if God exists that our lives become futile. This conclusion also enjoys support from Craig's arguments. So if what makes our lives meaningful is that they matter to, or they make a difference toward, or are causally relevant to bringing about events which are of ultimate significance, then of course a natural question is, what is that event with the most ultimate significance on the theistic view? Well, Betenson writes, quote, "The epitome of these significant events will undoubtedly be the attainment of ultimate justice, the satisfaction of the good. So it stands to reason that the satisfaction of the good is the only really ultimately significant event to which our actions can be causally related in such a way as to render our lives meaningful, unquote. But therein lies the problem. If our actions make no difference, if ultimate justice will prevail no matter what we do or fail to do, then our actions lack ultimate significance. They don't ultimately matter. They are causally irrelevant to the fulfillment of ultimate justice. Betenson argues, quote, "Given the truth of theism, the satisfaction of the good cannot fail to be achieved. Therefore, nothing I do can alleviate this outcome. My actions do not make a difference in the bringing about the good. My actions are utterly causally irrelevant to the satisfaction of the good, and as such, my life is rendered futile in the second sense of what it would mean for life to be futile." So that's Betenson's argument. It might be objected that these concepts of ultimate significance, or meaning, or ultimate futility, that these concepts lack precision. And that is probably a fair concern, but note that Betenson's response to Craig is an internal critique. See, he wants to grant Craig everything he can for the sake of the argument, in order to draw out his conclusion, which is a very unwelcome conclusion from Craig's point of view. It's an interesting argument. Please leave your comments below, or send me a tweet at Justin's Way. I'm really interested in what you guys have to say about this argument. And if you like this video, please click like and share it with your friends on social media. And be sure to subscribe to Real Atheology. Thank you for watching.